The Mississippi River has shaped Louisiana's wetlands for thousands of years, creating one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth. When the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers announced a plan to keep Neptune Pass permanently open, where the river meets the still waters of Louisiana's marshes, not long afterward, unexplained anomalies began to occur. In September 2022, fishermen in the Atchafalaya Basin reported fiberglass boats with 6 to 8 foot gouges and steel lobster cages twisted beyond known force limits. Demand for reinforced rope and netting surged, though no explanation emerged. Concern intensified after a kayaker near Whiskey Bay was lifted from below and thrown into the water. His kayak was later found cracked cleanly at structural weak points. Experts ruled out alligators, noting even the largest, 13 feet 1,000 pounds, could not generate that upward force. By late 2022, Lake Verret became a focal point. Swimmers described powerful downward pulls in calm water, with 2 hospitalizations in October. Rangers posted warnings without explanation. On April 8, 2024, swamp guide Leon Bro reported quarter-inch steel cables rated for 7,000 pounds snapping cleanly overnight. 5 similar reports followed across 3 parishes. On May 17, infrared footage captured a large object moving 15 meters underwater at 4 meters per second, registering warmer than the surrounding water, evidence of a warm-blooded organism roughly 25 to 30 feet long. No native species matched the profile. In June, hydrophones deployed by Nicholls State University recorded structured low-frequency pulses and impacts consistent with active acoustic sensing. Researchers concluded that the subject was locating and striking objects deliberately. Across 6 months, the evidence pointed to a large warm-blooded intelligent organism operating undetected until recent human activity and technology made its presence observable. The growing body of incidents prompted a formal response from Louisiana State University's Department of Biological Sciences. In July 2024, a multidisciplinary team launched Project Echo Deep, combining advanced sonar mapping, environmental DNA sampling, and continuous underwater surveillance across the most active reporting zones. The project became the most comprehensive aquatic survey ever conducted in Louisiana's inland waterways. Deep-sea sonar systems were adapted for shallow bayou conditions, using side-scan arrays to map bottom terrain and forward-looking sonar to track movement. Permanent monitoring stations were installed at 12 sites across Lake Foss Point, Bayou Cheney, and the Atchafalaya River confluence. Between July 9 and July 14, sonar detected large mobile contacts measuring 20 to 40 feet long at depths under 10 meters. The objects traveled at 2 to 6 knots and appeared most often during twilight and pre-dawn hours. On July 14 at 7:23 p.m., 2 approximately 30-foot contacts appeared simultaneously, moving in parallel with a constant 15-meter separation. After 4 minutes, both stopped, paused for 22 seconds, and descended below detection range, suggesting coordinated behavior or a single organism misread as 2. Environmental DNA analysis provided critical confirmation. Water samples from 10 sites revealed expected species but also unidentified genetic sequences from a large vertebrate, absent from global databases. Camera deployments produced the most costly evidence. Of the 8 industrial submersible cameras installed, 5 were destroyed between August and September. 3 were recovered, crushed beyond 1,000 psi tolerance. 2 vanished after their steel cables were cleanly severed. 1 surviving unit captured 47 minutes of footage, including a large form passing close enough to block ambient light, followed by turbulence, electromagnetic interference, and a forceful impact that ended the recording. Image analysis suggested a controlled, elongated body 20 to 25 feet long, and electrical signatures similar to large predatory animals. Researchers concluded the equipment was being deliberately located and destroyed, indicating advanced sensory awareness and adaptive behavior. The September 30, 2024, report confirmed a large, warm-blooded, unidentified vertebrate, likely multiple individuals, displaying intelligence inconsistent with any known North American species. Its classification, origin, and ecological role remain unknown. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like so YouTube can recommend it to even more people. Tap the hype button right below if you're watching on your phone. The 1975 film Jaws defined aquatic terror as a visible ocean predator, trackable in open water. What may be operating in Louisiana's Bayous is potentially more dangerous because it functions in confined shallow systems where visibility drops to 0 within meters. Dark tannic water, submerged logs, dense roots, and narrow channels provide ideal concealment and limit escape routes, creating conditions favorable to ambush predation. What sets these events apart from typical wildlife encounters is apparent intelligence. Large predators usually act on instinct, feeding, defending territory, or retreating when threatened. The Louisiana incidents show selective targeting, tactical awareness, and adaptation to human behavior. Dr. Juno Reyes of Texas A&M analyzed 47 incidents between March 2022 and August 2024. She identified consistent behavioral patterns, suggesting cognitive processing. Boat attacks occurred primarily during low-activity windows, early mornings or late evenings, while daytime incidents involved isolated vessels, indicating threat assessment and timing selection. Damage patterns showed tactical precision, anchor lines severed, motor mounts compromised, and hull breaches placed below the waterline near the stern. Each point disabled mobility or forced occupants into survival mode. Trap avoidance further demonstrated learning. Between May and July 2024, 9 reinforced baited traps were deployed across 4 parishes. All were emptied without being triggered or damaged. Sequential incidents reinforced this conclusion. A Morgan City commercial boat damaged on June 12 was repaired and returned to service, only to be struck again on June 23, this time on the opposite hull side, suggesting behavioral adjustment. Direct engagement evidence emerged on May 7, when aerial footage showed a wake tracking a kayaker on Lake Verret, with precise speed and directional matching. When the kayaker stopped, the wake stopped. After entering a narrow channel, the wake accelerated. The kayak was later recovered with deep parallel gouges. The kayaker was never found. Fishing activity dropped sharply afterward as crews altered routines and safety protocols. Dr. Reyes concluded that the subject demonstrated situational awareness, planning, learning, and adaptive response, traits associated with highly intelligent apex predators and inconsistent with known reptiles or fish. March 2022 marked the shift from rumor to documentation. A commercial fisherman near Bayou Pigeon filed the first report, later recognized as part of a larger pattern. His 14-foot aluminum skiff, operated daily for 6 years, was struck from below with enough force to bend a reinforced steel rod holder, welded to the gunwale. The impact snapped a 3/4-inch braided nylon anchor line, rated for 3,000 pounds, and nearly capsized the boat. Visibility was 0 in tannin-stained water, but the fisherman reported feeling something long and dark pass beneath the hull, moving with controlled speed rather than the erratic motion typical of startled alligators. He estimated its length at over 30 feet. The report was filed with St. Martin Parish deputies and dismissed as an exaggeration. That dismissal weakened when 2 similar reports arrived the same week. Both described sudden underwater impacts, damaged equipment, and brief glimpses of a large dark form moving through murky water. The consistency across independent witnesses distinguished the events from typical misidentification. By May 2022, reports were occurring too frequently to be attributed to coincidence. Swamp tour guides from Breaux Bridge and Patterson, professionals spending 40 to 50 hours per week on the water, began noting unusual sonar returns. Fish finder displays showed large contacts at depths of 8 to 15 meters, moving slowly near dusk, when most native species were either surface feeding or inactive. Skepticism declined after an incident at 7:20 p.m. On May 18, a tour boat carrying 11 passengers lost engine power following a loud splash roughly 20 meters off the stern. The guide, a 30-year veteran, reported the vessel was pushed from below with controlled force for several seconds before the pressure was released. A submerged object moved away, producing a visible surface wake. The onboard fish finder recorded a 25-foot contact approaching from astern, rising within 2 meters of the hull, pausing briefly then descending and departing. The engine restarted immediately afterward, suggesting electromagnetic interference rather than mechanical failure. Passengers recorded video of the wake, though poor light and water turbidity prevented visual identification. Long before sonar or genetic analysis, the indigenous peoples of southern Louisiana understood the Bayous through generations of observation. The Huma, Chitimacha, Atacapa, and later Cajun settlers, who arrived in the 1760s, developed detailed knowledge of waterways that sustained them, along with firm boundaries they learned not to cross. These limits were preserved through oral warnings: avoid moonlit fishing near deep channels, twisted cypress roots, or still water suitable for overnight anchoring. To outsiders, such rules sounded like superstition. Within swamp communities, they represented survival knowledge, shaped by loss. Historical accounts from French observers in the 1740s described Huma fishing protocols consistent with predator avoidance, including traveling in groups, avoiding certain flooded channels, and refusing to retrieve nets after dark. Chitimacha traditions recorded in the early 1900s referenced water guardians, physical, territorial beings capable of violence, described in terms of size, strength and intelligence rather than spirituality. Cajun folklore introduced the legend of Letic in the early 19th century, likely older than written records. Core elements remained consistent across regions, being active at night, territorial over specific waterways, capable of overturning boats, and emitting guttural sounds suggestive of warning rather than aggression. While often interpreted symbolically, many traits align closely with modern incident reports. In St. Parish, fishing guides raised along Bayou Teche were taught never to anchor near certain cypress root formations, large enough to shelter something substantial. Elders offered no explanations, only accounts of damaged boats and missing fishermen. When equipment damage reports increased in 2023, younger guides noted the affected areas matched these forbidden zones almost exactly. This generational knowledge suggests the entity documented today is not new, but long established. Climate shifts, increased human activity after 2020, and improved detection technology likely brought humans into closer contact with something long avoided. For Indigenous and Cajun communities, recent scientific attention represents validation, not discovery. The consistency of folklore across cultures and centuries supports its value as data rather than dismissal. The Letic legend persists across Cajun communities from Lafayette to Houma, retaining core elements for at least 150 years. The most complete written account appears in a 1934 Federal Writers Project folklore collection. In that version, a Cajun infant in the early 1800s died before baptism and was buried near a bayou chapel. After hurricane flooding, the grave was disturbed, and the casket was later found empty and broken from within. Months afterward, fishermen reported a small figure moving rapidly through shallow water near the burial site, diving for long periods and feeding on fish and small alligators. Over time, sightings described a growing figure blending human and reptilian traits, elongated limbs, scaled skin, shifting posture, and forward-facing eyes reflecting light with focused awareness. The being became known as Letic, from Letic, meaning something attached to the swamp and impossible to remove. Reports shared consistent traits. Letic avoided groups, targeted isolated individuals at night, and struck boats near dense cypress stands with impacts from below. Witnesses described a deep modulated vocalization distinct from alligator sounds. Bayou Teche and Lake Foss Point became focal points, with repeated reports throughout the 20th century. Between 1967 and 1998, at least 14 boats capsized in Lake Foss Point during calm conditions, resulting in 6 drownings. Survivors reported vessels being lifted from below, with no signs of alligator thrashing or bite marks. Skeptics attributed the incidents to misidentified alligators, but the absence of tooth damage, lack of seasonal pattern, and controlled movement conflicted with known behavior. Interest renewed in 2021, when LSU researchers recorded 37 unexplained sonar contacts in areas tied to historic Letic sightings. The consistency of descriptions across generations and locations suggests encounters with a real organism rather than folklore alone. Louisiana's vast, understudied bayou systems could support large, concealed predators adapted to nocturnal activity. Growing physical evidence since 2022 increasingly supports the possibility that Letic reflects preserved biological knowledge of an undocumented apex species. Louisiana's bayous support formidable predators. American alligators exceed 11 feet, with verified specimens reaching 13.5 feet and over 900 pounds. Their bite force surpasses 2,000 psi, and they can remain submerged for hours. While capable of attacking boats, alligators are cold-blooded, follow predictable hunting patterns, and appear cooler than the surrounding water on thermal imaging. The warm-blooded thermal signatures recorded eliminated them as primary candidates. Alligator gar were also considered. Though powerful and armored, they rarely exceed 10 feet or 300 pounds, and lack the size, strength and behavior needed to explain 30-foot sonar contacts, snapped steel cables, or crushed titanium equipment. Their ambush feeding style and lack of territorial or tactical behavior further ruled them out. Blue catfish, despite reaching 100 to 140 pounds, are scavengers and pose no comparable threat. Invasive species were tested next. Snakeheads and Asian carp lack both the size and behavior described. Environmental DNA sampling from January to March 2024 confirmed only native species. Anomalous DNA sequences did not match any known invasive organisms. Some researchers proposed a prehistoric holdover, citing rare precedents like the coelacanth. Louisiana's interconnected waterways could theoretically support a small concealed population. However, paleontological records show no evidence of large reptiles surviving past the Pleistocene, and no physical remains support such survival. Dr. Melanie Trass summarized the dilemma. Thermal, genetic, and behavioral data indicate a large, warm-blooded, intelligent vertebrate where none should exist. The findings suggest either an extreme anomaly within a known species, an undiscovered apex predator, or multiple species behaving in unprecedented ways. None fully explains the evidence, leaving the phenomenon real but biologically unclassified. Understanding how a large predator could remain undetected requires understanding the bayou itself. Southern Louisiana's wetlands form one of North America's most complex yet least studied ecosystems. Roughly 3 million acres of interconnected channels, lakes, swamps, and marshes were shaped by millennia of Mississippi River flooding. Ancient bald cypress trees with root systems extending 15 to 20 feet below the surface create dense underwater labyrinths, while floating vegetation conceals shallow areas. Depth changes are abrupt. Channels can drop from 2 feet to 12 meters within short distances, complicating navigation and mapping. The bottom consists of thick organic sediment that traps equipment and rapidly decomposes biological remains. Visibility is the greatest limitation. Tannic acids stain the water dark brown, reducing light penetration to near zero below 3 meters. Field measurements in 2023 showed visibility of just 6 to 18 inches at most sites. Below the surface, permanent twilight dominates. In winter, ambient light at 5 meters drops to deep ocean levels by early evening and remains minimal for up to 13 hours daily. These conditions favor predators adapted to low light or non-visual senses. Acoustically, dense vegetation, irregular terrain, wildlife noise, and boat traffic mask movement and sound, further reducing detectability. Thermal layering adds another factor. Summer surface water can reach 90 pF, while deeper channels remain near 75 pF, creating density boundaries that interfere with standard recreational sonar. A predator exploiting these layers could avoid detection. Human presence historically was limited. Indigenous tribes developed detailed ecological knowledge but left little written record. European exploration avoided interior wetlands, and Cajun communities focused on subsistence rather than biological survey. Roads, widespread boating, and modern detection tools arrived only in the mid to late 20th century. Together, these factors allowed large predators to persist with minimal observation. Only after 2020 did advanced sonar, thermal imaging, drones, hydrophones, and environmental DNA make systematic detection feasible, transforming long-held local knowledge into something science could finally test. Confirmation of a previously unknown apex predator in North American waters would rank among the most significant biological discoveries in over a century. The last comparable event was the 1976 identification of the megamouth shark, a deep ocean species. Discovering a large predator in Louisiana's heavily populated and extensively studied waterways would challenge assumptions about biodiversity, detection limits, and ecological knowledge. The implications extend beyond science. An intelligent carnivore hunting in waters used by more than 150,000 recreational boaters annually presents a public safety issue requiring immediate response. Louisiana's commercial fishing industry, worth over $400 million per year, operates in areas where incidents cluster. Equipment losses, vessel damage, and potential fatalities demand resolution regardless of uncertainty. Ecologically, an unseen apex predator would alter the understanding of wetland food webs. Apex species regulate prey and shape ecosystems. If such a predator has long existed undetected, conservation and management decisions were made without accounting for its role. Wildlife agencies would need to revise protocols, establish monitoring, define habitat, and balance protection with safety, an unprecedented challenge in modern U.S. policy. Concern escalated after the May 2024 kayaker disappearance near Henderson Swamp. Since April 2024, 6 documented incidents involved overturned boats or forced water entry. Standard safety guidance offers little protection against a predator capable of assessing vulnerability and striking from below. Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries issued informal guidance but avoided formal warnings due to economic and evidentiary concerns. For Indigenous and Cajun communities, confirmation would validate long-dismissed knowledge. Yet it also raises fears of exploitation, tourism pressure, and disruption of local life. Managing the tension between science, safety, conservation, and community rights has no clear precedent. The broader question extends beyond Louisiana. If such a predator could remain hidden here, what else may exist elsewhere, and how responsibly humans choose to respond? By July 2024, the Louisiana Bayou mystery had moved from regional concern to national attention. Media headlines framed it as folklore, while documentary crews and cryptozoology enthusiasts arrived with advanced equipment. As public fascination grew, skepticism from mainstream biologists remains strong. Critics attributed the events to misidentified alligators, equipment failure, exaggerated testimony, and confirmation bias, noting that cryptozoology history is filled with claims that never produce definitive proof. Most cryptid reports worldwide collapse under scrutiny. However, several factors distinguish this case. Witnesses include experienced fishermen, guides, and law enforcement officers. Physical evidence consists of documented equipment damage tied to police reports and insurance claims. Sonar and thermal data were collected using calibrated scientific instruments. Most critically, environmental DNA sampling repeatedly detected unidentified vertebrate genetic sequences across multiple locations and dates. Contamination and sequencing errors were ruled out, leaving evidence of a real large organism absent from existing genetic databases. 3 explanations remain. The entity could be a known species displaying extreme anomalies, though this fails to explain warm-blooded thermal signatures. It could be an invasive species, but eDNA testing ruled out known invasives. The remaining possibility is an undiscovered species adapted to the bayou's low visibility, complex hydrology, and long-term isolation, an explanation that best fits the combined evidence and aligns with indigenous and Cajun knowledge preserved for generations. If confirmed, the implications extend far beyond Louisiana, challenging assumptions about biodiversity in developed regions and highlighting the scientific value of traditional ecological knowledge. As investigations expand, the central question is no longer whether something exists, but how humans respond when proof finally arrives. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming journeys. And if you like exploring more fascinating underwater things, check out my video about the strangest creatures ever pulled up from the seabed, where a glowing creature in Florida continuously glowed for 3 days and was reportedly bought for $1 million.